Okay, welcome once again, people. I don't know what happened. I've been having technical difficulties, especially when it comes to these particular topics. I thank you for joining me, and I have a special guest on today. We're starting this video over, and what I'm going to talk about is what is going on in this country. Where are we at as the United States? As the topic says, whoop, that ain't the right one. Let's go back to that. As the topic says, what is the United States or the USA becoming? Joining with me today on video chat is John Woolard. I'm glad that and privileged that he has been able to join me, and we're going to discuss this thing. We're going to talk about what is free enterprise and capitalist society, what is progressivism, what is socialism and Nazism and communism and fascism, and what is red fascism. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just lay it out for you right now. I'm going to describe for you by way of introduction a few things, and then I'm going to give John an opportunity to respond to that, and then I'm going to come back and give him a proper introduction, and then we're going to break this whole thing down and come to historical conclusions and facts from historical we're going to come to conclusions based on historical facts and facts that these particular aspects of government actually say about themselves. So what I'm laying out for you is not necessarily my opinion or John's opinion, but it is our opinions separate or together based on, like I said, what these types of governments say about themselves and what history, if you connect the dots, what history will actually tell you. And then we're going to show you at what step or what stage our government is at, or our country is at in this entire process based on these things. So, John, what I want to tell you is that, back in the 1980s when I was in the military, I thought to myself, there are the makings of things that we really need to pay attention to and to keep an eye on. And this was, and this may have a place in it, and that was a part of the bringing down of the Berlin Wall, which some will say was a facade, a distraction of what was going on underneath of all that. Some will say, no, it was the real thing. But and it's interesting that you are putting a stake in the timeline for that same era of time. It's kind of interesting that you would do that. And so with that, what I'm going to say is that coming into the bubble burst and the housing crash and the economic crash of 2008, I begin to dig into things in 2009 because I was told to get ready. And as I was talking to you earlier, we know that they came from an internal voice, and we all know where that comes from. And I then began to do some digging. And what I found was that there was a document from the United States government just months prior on how they were going to funnel 6 million people, 92-page document, by the way, precisely 92 pages, on how they were going to funnel 6 million people into my front yard, into our county, particularly the eastern part of our county. And then I started talking to people. I have a lot of contacts because I'm in this bedroom community of DC, and I know things. I started talking to people, and one person I talked to was describing how the federal government was working with the local school systems to use school buses as rolling gates to funnel people into certain areas that they wanted them to settle and be processed. And from there, I've talked to a guy who built custom sniper rifles for various global letter agencies, as well as other aspects of government. And from there, we had the nuclear detectors go off on the southern border 24 times. And the female that was running Homeland Security gave the distinct orders: do not pursue those illegal nuclear devices coming into our country. That happened 24 times in the first quarter of Obama's sitting, whatever you want to call it. And the same thing happened in the port of Los Angeles, and those people were told to shut up. And then you had just all kinds of stuff, like the nuclear devices that they wanted to set off in at least 3 major cities. And Lindsey, and this is Googleable, and Lindsey Graham actually made the statement: if we don't bomb Syria, we just might have a nuclear bomb go off in the Charleston, South Carolina harbor. He flat said that on C-SPAN. And the list goes on, from Fast and Furious to just everything from within, like enemies within, to undermine anything that would possibly negate something from without. And so we have that, and now we're at the point where we are now. So, John, what do you have to say about all that before I actually give you a proper introduction?
Well, we're going to go through several facets of what you've just described and how we got here as we continue on breaking this down. First of all, though, this is all a concerted effort. It's not a surprise. The recession, global dropout of 2008 was not a surprise.
Yeah.
Our president at the time went to Congress 13 times and warned them that this was coming. 13 separate times. It's all on record. You can find it. And Congress just said, so what?
And I forgot to mention too that in 2010, just to add to this, and we can come back to you again. In 2010, Jeff Sessions asked Panetta, who was head of the Pentagon at that time, for 29 minutes grilled him and asked, why are you sending our military to war when Congress is the constitutional body that declares war and sends our military to war? Only then does the president fill the shoes of commander-in-chief.
Yep.
He is the president of the people until we go to war, and then he becomes the commander-in-chief over the military. And our military has been sent to war decade after decade, and no war has been declared by Congress. And he was grilling Panetta, and Panetta finally said at 29 minutes and some odd seconds, we take our orders from the UN and from NATO. When you have a need to know, we'll let you know. Otherwise, we're doing our own thing. So what does that say about the president's position militarily in a war footing that is never declared versus what's going on in the country today? This just adds to what I said to begin with.
Exactly.
It all comes down into a funnel of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, so 1912, when you look up 1912, you'll see a few things happen. There was some banking that was established. There were a few things that were chartered in this country.
Are you talking about Jekyll Island and the gold standard and the Federal Reserve and the fiat currency? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's where we're going to start. So there's a bunch we're going to get into, but I want to specifically address what you've just spoken to. What we're seeing right now, that is basically the proverbial zit of the underlying infection. Okay. 2008 was planned. I was in the automotive industry, and we were warned it was coming for a year. How does that warning happen a year, 18 months ahead of time, with a pretty much guaranteed date of when it's going to happen, if this is something that is just a result of a bad policy.
Well, we saw the
which
same,
is how it was marketed.
Yeah, and we saw the same thing with COVID-Con coming out from 2016 and 17, saying they were going to hit that if Trump got in, and now they're talking.
Yep.
And now they're talking about Variant X, which is a new thing, but they've been talking about that since 2020. Anyways, it seems to be a pattern.
None of this is to chance. Understand? Everything you're seeing is all been a part of a plan that was hatched back in the early 1800s, really, and specifically speaking to the introduction points. What we're seeing now is the next genesis of the plan. It is not anything really new if you've been a student of history or paid attention to anything. However, most people don't pay attention to anything, so it's completely new.
And why do they not pay attention? Do they not have time, or do they not care?
I don't believe it's. I believe that busy's part of it. I believe that apathy's part of it. But more importantly, I believe that conditioning, and I can prove it. Mass formation psychosis is a real thing. Mass formation hypnosis is actually the more appropriate term for it.
And by the way, people, that leads to the layman's terms of normalcy bias. Go ahead.
Exactly. So there's a lot and I don't want to get ahead of or behind where we need to go here, but there's a lot of provable science here that shows that this is a concerted effort, and it's all part of the same cycle of civilization. Honestly, nothing's new under the sun.
Right.
The only thing we have that the Romans didn't have is
media.
Informational overload.
Yeah, media.
We have the internet, so it's quicker. That's it. Romans suffered the same fate we're going through.
Well, and the leaders used the same mechanisms.
Exactly right.
Just on their level of ability.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So hold that thought, the Romans and that mechanism. So before we go any further, I want to take a quick station break and then introduce you and then come back to this whole thing. Okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is I'm Tim Wright with Timotheos Media TV, and I just ask that if you are enjoying this topic, if this is something that is meaningful to you, that you like and subscribe, and you follow me on YouTube, and also, if you don't mind, check out my Etsy shop, where I share products based around my landscape products. And that's all I'm going to say. I want to get back into the topic at hand, but I just hope, and I just ask you, I need to ask you to go ahead and like and share and subscribe, because this is a topic that is much needed, and I could use the help. Just help me out. So with that, let's get back to John and this discussion, and we'll continue on. John, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? And as you get into that, I will add just a little bit, and then we'll keep just kind of piggyback off of each other through this until we get back into the discussion.
So, born in Flint, Michigan, 1967, Christmas Day. I was the only president Mom couldn't take back that year. Not that she didn't try.
I was a Thanksgiving turkey on my birthday.
Understand. So I grew up in Flint, watched the city once vibrant and a very large and very cohesive community kind of go belly up. And in the 70s, things had gotten to a point in our area where it was no longer safe to live there for anyone. And my mom took us north to the wonderful little hamlet of Augrey, which is where I met you, sir. So
no kidding.
Yeah.
So let's describe. Let's describe for people the little hamlet of Augrey. So
Well,
I,
you,
I'm
wa- you,
I'm going to say something, and then you can follow up. So I graduated in 1982. John is a couple grades behind me, and I had the largest graduating class, probably either side of 20 years. It was 49 kids. I was the
Jeez.
yes, it was 49 kids. 90% of us went into the military because there was nothing else there. And we all, I think if you look back, we all had a sense of patriotism as well. Most of the people we continue to talk to would identify or recognize what we're discussing, and
Mhm.
and so the school at large, from kindergarten through 12, was on one campus, and it was less than 500 kids.
Yep.
And the town
Yep.
that you grew up in, that my parents have a store to this day in, was less than a mile in from one end to the other.
Yeah. Basically, you are now entering and you are now leaving Agre was on the same post.
Well, no, that was
Um,
Omer.
yeah. Well, yeah. Well, oh, yeah. But Omer wasn't even a city. So at that time.
It was a village. So,
So,
anyways,
yep.
yep. So now
Yep.
you can tell us anything you want about Au Gres and about growing up, and
Ag-
then into
yep.
exactly who you are and why we are talking right now.
When we moved there, I actually did the research. When we moved there, there were 414 kids in Agre Sims from kindergarten through senior year.
Less,
414.
so I was close, less than 500.
414. There were 860 people, permanent residents in Agre at that time. Not a very big town. It has since swelled and grown to the megalopolis numbers of around 1,300. So,
And that's waned. That's come and gone.
yeah, and that was at its heyday. Now it's back down under 1,000 again. But what a beautiful little town to grow up in. I didn't appreciate it when I first got there. I came from Flint, where there was always something to get into and something to do, to a town where people shared the same phone number. So it was interesting. So yeah, Agre was neat. Went in the military, just like Tim had said, in 1988. I was took off for basic training. I started off in the Air Force, and within a very short time figured out that was not quite for me. Stayed attached to the Air Force, but I raised my hand when people were looking for volunteers for a special assignment. I went into what they call the War Reserve Spare Kit, which is where you basically jump out of the back of an airplane and build a base behind enemy lines that will support aircraft as needed. From there, I went into a very little known at that time thing called Forward Combat Control. And what Forward Combat Control did was we jumped out of planes behind enemy lines and basically illuminated targets and called strikes in on key infrastructure of the enemy. Go ahead.
So that was right on the post of the development of the laser triangulation system.
Yep.
Which I had the privilege of documenting the later aspects of it at work.
That's awesome.
As a combat photographer with the post commander that I was under. We went out and actually documented that system in its final quality control run before it was implemented into the military.
That's wild. The beginning of the Iraq War, you'll see, if you look back, you'll see these images of missiles flying in windows and down little,
Stacks.
ventilation shafts. Yep. Well, our task was to go and illuminate those with a little box called an azimuth laser aperture send unit. And we would have the numbers that we needed to do. We'd know where the plane was going to be. We'd know this. We'd set these things in the corner back where it couldn't be seen. We'd set the numbers on we had an up and a, basically like a scope, a rifle scope. and it would send that laser up, and these bombs would come hit that laser, turn into the laser, and drive down the string and blow the building up.
Or whatever else
That
is
was
under
the
there.
beginning. Right. Well, whatever we told it to come get, it would follow that. It would basically, when you look at it that way, it was coming to blow up the box, and whatever was around it was just a casualty of war. Right. So that was before the GPS system was initiated a few years later. So in the Gulf War I, that was my job. And while we were there, of course, we had to gather intel because we were already there. And they hadn't quite the satellite coverage they do now. SR-71s could do just so much, amazing aircraft, but nothing beats boots on the ground. So we were the boots.
Well, what the SR-71 did was really good at outrunning oncoming missiles.
Oh yeah,
nothing could catch it at the time.
Nope, nothing still can.
But
that was quite an airframe.
Yeah, those units used to fly out and come back with they were so fast that the paint would be burnt off. They'd have to repaint it every time it came back and hit the ground.
It would grow literally 20 some inches in length and width because of thermal expansion. It got so hot.
Unreal. I believe it.
The genius that was used to some that aircraft, and it's still so far ahead of its time. We still haven't had that kind of a technological breakthrough as the Skunk Works did on that particular airplane. It was just Kelly Johnson was a savant. He was.
So, correct me if I'm not going to say that. There's more than jet propulsion that makes that thing move. We'll say that.
Well, there's 3 types of propulsion in one engine.
So there's other propulsion going on right now, and maybe it's not the propulsion. No, I'm not going to get into that. That's national.
That's a rabbit trail that'll go crazy.
Well, that's something that anybody that needs to that wants to get into that is not supposed to. I'm not opening that door. Right.
So, matter at hand. Where are we now? That's the topic, right?
So
I've done considerable deep dives and research on our country as a governance system, our country as an economic system. And most folks, if you come up to them on the street, you say, "What is the United States as a government?" And they're going to tell you it's a democracy. Well, those of us who studied a little bit know better. We're not a democracy, and thank God we're not. We were set up as a republic.
With a democratic process.
A representative republic, which lends to the democratic process,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So in governance, that's the ideal. Now, we've strayed way far from that. We're not even really a democracy anymore. We are veering over into a oligarchy or an autocracy, where the government is basically propped up by industry and by controlling interests with the subterfuge and illusion of choice for the people.
So before we get any further, then let's describe, because what we have over the last decade and a half, at least, if not 2 decades, we have the so-called elected leadership claiming either what they are supposed to be, or certain of them they're like, well, I'm not a socialist, I'm a progressive. Then they'll come out and say, oh, I'm a socialist. And then so what is a progressive versus a free representative versus a socialist versus a communist? And then we can go from there. Well, and then you got Nazism, which what people don't realize, that there's overlap in all of this, but they all have their distinctive flavors as well. And one of them doesn't necessarily like the other. On the other hand, what I think we're seeing, and I've said this over and over and over again, what we're seeing is a perfect convolution of all of the above rolled into one ball of wax.
Yep.
So what is a progressive? Is it real? In my personal opinion, is a progressive is a socialist just trying to fly under the radar by name and progressive only.
Progressivism as a unit is a banner more than an actual governance. Progressivism is a banner. Okay, progressivism is a liberalist, which means, liberal means give freely. We have all this stuff.
Open-minded.
Give.
Open-minded.
Open-minded. The socioeconomic part of progressivism is, rich people don't need all their money. We need to spend it on the disenfranchised, and progressivism. And guys, you got to understand, progressivism is necessary. It is. If you have pure conservatism, you will stifle an economy. If you have pure liberalism, you will ruin an economy. These two things have to work in concert, and that's what we see cyclically in our elections. And I'm gonna slow things down real quick. Our elections. So what we do is we gather every 4 years to determine the next 4 years, right or wrong. And what you'll see is
as the representative head of we the people.
Right. Well, we consent to be governed. That's what a republic is. Okay. So when we get into our elections, what you see is a pendulum that goes left to right, left to right, left to right. And I'm just going to start. This is for instance, this is not a name thing. So we start off with a conservative guy. Okay, right now they call him a Republican. We'll get into why they're not, but initially why it was Republicans were the conservatives and Democrats were the liberals, right? So we hire the conservative guy. I'll start there. I am a constitutional conservative. I'm neither Republican nor Democrat.
Thank you.
Okay?
People don't understand that.
They will here in a minute. So we hire this guy and we give him 4 years to do his thing, right? That used to be longer than that, but they passed, and rightfully so. They put term limits on it. So for 4 years, he does this thing. We elect another one. Hopefully, if this guy did good or the other guy or the other person really sucks, we have 8 years of this. So we have 8 years of conservatism, and you'll see this cycle every time we have an election. The red team and the blue team go at it, and the red team tells how good they've done, how bad the blue team was the last time we were in. The blue team says how good they've done and how bad the red team was the last time they were in. They really don't talk about anything that's going on in the country. They just talk about what the other ones did wrong. Understand that? And we go like this. We do this. Red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. And we think that by electing the other team, it's going to fix things. It's been that way since the beginning of our elections. Really has, especially in the modern era, after about 1912. So we get this swing, liberal, conservative, liberal, conservative. So while we're doing this progressivism marches. And what it does is it basically narrows the pendulum swing, but it creates a Z-axis.
And it tries to meet it in the middle.
Well, it creates a Z-axis because we, the people, see things swing left to right like a clock pendulum. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if a clock did front to back and side to side? Unless you are at the right angle, you'll never see the front to back. That's what progressivism does. They install a Z-axis to this, and they look at things that the controlling interests want, and they initiate these steps. While we're still watching this, the sleight of hand is going on this way. Mm-hmm. And it's moving us towards something. So we talked about our government. We have right, wrong, or indifferent, and we are still the most free country on this planet. No one's coming here to help us. We are it. I have never seen anybody build a raft out of pickle barrels and float to a communist country for a better life.
Through shark-infested seas and swells.
Through shark-infested seas, squalls, hurricanes, all of it. So we are it. We are the best chance. And that's the problem. We are the best chance. We got to understand that if we took the lowest third of the income earners in our country that work, okay, I'm not going to say the people that are out of work, the lowest third of would be the top 1% in the rest of the globe. A $40,000 a year job is considered royalty in every other country than this one. Understand that.
So here's part of the problem with the socialist and the communist and the fascist in this country. They are taking all of those free enterprise and capitalistic definitions and twisting them. They are adopting them for their own use and hijacking them and redefining them to push socialism into fascism the whole time that they are slamming it.
Yep. Well, and
I've got some things I want to read to actually verify that. So if you go and you understand this, it says that socialism is an understanding in the United States. It is a broad, equal access to the necessary means to live flourishing lives with minimal class division. Now, that's assuming that socialism actually provides that, and it negates the idea that free enterprise and capitalism actually provides that if you're not freaking lazy.
Someone walking in the door here.
In its simplest form, socialism believes that all people should be able to jointly use, share, and receive the benefits from both natural resources and the goods and services that are collectively produced. The problem with that is that they assume that people are going to work to produce them under socialism. They also assume that they are not going to be slaves in that work. And they also, and it is overseen by an elected body, the government, which they assume is going to be on equal footing that they are, which is actually what the free enterprise by the people for the people system is, because those people are not to be lawyers constitutionally. They are to be of the people, business people, workers, and the judges and the legislature are to be of the people. They are not, well, not judges, but the legislators, House and the Senate and the House are not to be lawyers, but 99% of them are. They are to be shop owners. They're to be manufacturing owners. They're to be CEOs. They're to be people of the street. And this definition of socialism is stealing that stuff and repurposing it under the guise of equality, when in fact a free enterprise system equals equality if you get your fat, lazy butt off the couch and stick your neck out and do something. And,
well, what they do is they try to put equity in place of equality.
Well, and that's a misnomer in and of itself, because equity is there is no equity if there is no investment.
Exactly. So that's called a conflation. They're trying to conflate equity with equality. And equality already exists. Everybody has equal access to get up off the couch and go get a job.
Thank you.
Everybody does.
You know, I'm going to describe this, John. Sorry to cut you off.
Sorry.
I've lost my shirt twice. I've worked for people. When I do, I get off my couch, I go to work, I give them my best time. I'm the best that I can be for them, because if I don't do my job, they don't make a profit, I don't get a paycheck. But they're the ones that stuck their neck out to make it happen before I got there.
Risk versus reward.
And exactly. And they should have the cream of the crop. And in so doing, I will get a portion of it because I helped to turn the wheel. Now, I've gotten off my butt and I've tried to be that person at the top twice. Now I'm doing my own thing for the third time, and I'm finally getting some cream off the crop. But I've lost my shirt twice. Now, here's the thing. I never once said that those people ever owe me anything except what we agreed upon.
Yep.
Ever. What I did do, and when I stuck my own neck out and lost my shirt, and the system did not play in my favor. The lawyers didn't want to back me up. The attorney generals didn't want to back me up, even though somebody else screwed me out of tens of thousands of dollars. But you know what? I still thank God that I had the opportunity to even try.
That's right.
Because in a socialistic society, in a communistic society, and in a fascist society, you will not have the opportunity.
Nope. No economic model has ever lifted people out of poverty other than capitalism. And there's distinct types of capitalism. We are laissez-faire capitalists on paper.
Coupled with free enterprise.
Well, that is free enterprise. Laissez-faire is. Socialism, there's several different tenets of socialism, and it's gone from a socialistic, everybody has a piece of the pie, to it's evolved towards, and it always does, by the way, it always evolved towards a communistic, what we've been told is communism. Understand that. We're children of the 80s, right? So true communism is everybody is communal. Everybody is equal and everyone has an equal share. There's no hierarchy. There is literally a collective or a communal approach to governance, to economy, and everybody has a share that is equal. That's communal. Okay. That's the actual real definition of communism. We haven't seen a real communist country in the history of the United States. We've seen people purport to be communistic.
How about North Korea? How about North Korea?
They're not, because Kim Jong-un is rich and everyone else is poor. That's not communism.
I understand. I get you. So
communism, Kim Jong-un would be just as poor as the next guy.
So
that's communal. That's communal living.
So it's the distinction between either a dictatorship.
We're going to get there. We're going to narrow this down. Okay.
There you go.
Because communal. So communism is no longer on the plate. We've just destroyed the whole ruse of communism. Communism was sold to us in the 80s as the Ruskies being the bad guy.
Right.
They are bad guys, but they're not communists.
Yep.
And you'll see that here in just a minute. Because they do not have a non-centralized bank, and they do not have a non-hierarchical governance. Once you have those two things, communal living, communism is no longer there. Once you have a central bank and you have a hierarchical governance, you are no longer communist because you are no longer communal. So that one's off the table. That one's gone.
And let's ask and pose this question real quick. If you by chance did have a communal situation, as on paper, as in paradise, how long do you think, or how, if there has ever been that in existence, how long would it last? Because, well, I mean, because somebody is invariably not going to be satisfied.
You getting it? Oh, there's a long discussion there. Now, let's stick with where we are. We're going to get to that. Let's stick where we are, because there's really no way to quantify how long it would last. From my understanding from experience, probably about 37 minutes. Because someone will want, honestly, if you think about it, I can show you the macro look at humanity in a toddler. When a toddler wants the red sippy cup, what happens?
Throws a fit.
All hell breaks loose until the toddler gets the red sippy cup.
Exactly.
Now give that toddler position, power, and penance, money. Right?
Give the top. What about the blue sippy cup?
Right. Well, the blue sippy cup, if somebody wants that, then now you have to have more power, more money, and more position.
And somebody else's money, by the way.
Well, and that's the thing, right? There's no such thing as government funded. It's all taxpayer funded.
Anyways.
The government don't make a dime,
We're just trying to make a point here, people. Anyways.
Exactly. So if communism were real, then everybody would have a share of the GDP of the country, the gross domestic product. All of our bank accounts would have X amount of dollars based on the GDP. We would also share in the debit column. Understand that. We would have equal reward for equal risk. We would all be vested in this corporation called a country.
And that's assuming we all put forth equal effort with equal skill and equal everything else, which is never, ever going to happen.
Right. We're going to get to that, because now...
Why am I keep saying stuff and you keep saying we're going to get to stuff?
Well, because you're jumping in front of the train, mister. So communism, understand, communism, everybody has an equal share of the risk and an equal share of the reward, right? Mm-hmm. So that means they have an equal application of vestment, not investment, but vestment, which means their participation.
Yes.
Right? So communism really doesn't exist. It's a utopian thing. It's a beautiful idea, honestly. If you think about it, that would be in a time yet to come, we will see this, honestly. And that people freak out when I say that, but there's going to be a time when we actually do see communal living where everyone's equals.
There's going to be those that don't like it.
Well, there's going to be those that aren't there.
They're not there. There's going to be those that are there, but they're of a different variety. But there are going to be those because that will come by rule by a rod.
Well, it's either ballot or bullet, right? It's the only way you get anything done. So now we got communism off the table. We're going to look at socialism. I love socialism. Socialism is a fun study. Because socialism, there's three different kinds of socialism, right? There is Bismarck socialism.
Oh, I got to start taking notes.
No problem.
Everybody else take notes.
There is Bismarckian, Bismarck socialism, all right? And Bismarck socialism was actually intended to be a good thing. And understand, when you talk to the proponents of these things, all of them started off as a good thing. So, socialism, when you boil it down, okay, you have Bismarckian, you have Marxist-Leninist, and then you have decentralized. Those are the three majors. I mean, you can dovetail anything in there, but when you boil it all down, those are the things that come. Bismarckian was Chancellor Bismarck, Prince Bismarck, in Germany, and it was all about making things better for the working individual. When Prince Bismarck moved this forward, there was, and this is, listen close, because you're going to hear a lot of the things we do. There was the insurance of workmen against accidents. What does that sound like? Unemployment, right?
Sounds like
unemployment insurance.
Well, it also sounds like what comes out of unions.
Exactly. Well, unemployment insurance came because of unions. Against sickness, against old age. And there was an establishment of a cooperative understanding and a cooperative association that was protected by the state. That's your union, right? You with me?
Yep.
Now, when did Prince Bismarck live?
When?
Yep. When was he in power?
I don't know, because I don't have the ability to Google anything without screwing up my live stream.
1862 through 1890. Crazy, isn't it?
Relatively recent then.
Yep. And he was forming unions back then. So there's where things started to shift. Put a pin in that. So now we're looking at socialism. We're going to look at the broad-based version of socialism, okay? Socialism is social ownership of the means of production as opposed to private ownership.
Exactly.
Social ownership of the economics as opposed to private ownership, and social ownership of material goods and land as opposed to private ownership. Now, you see how socialism, just based on that definition, will always gravitate towards communism.
And by the way, that also includes social ownership of profits versus private ownership of profits.
Well, that's material goods.
Yep.
Profits, money is material goods. Okay, so that's in there. But good clarification. So in this, you have the Marxist-Leninist theory, okay? And that is considered by most historians the intermediate between pure capitalism and communism. So the means of production are collectively owned but a completely classless society has not yet been achieved. Collectively owned, that means everybody's got a piece of it, but there's still hierarchy. All right. And that becomes the proletariat. That's the stuff that you and I are very familiar with, because we heard that coming up and we heard that going through the military when we did. The useful idiots.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So, however, socialism will always turn into communism, or it will revert back to capitalism. Socialism is communism light. Understand, the definition of communism is no centralized governance, no centralized economy or banking. So socialism is a centralized governance and a centralized economy or banking. So both communism and socialism at the core of their definition are the same. They are state capitalists.
And this is why, folks, it's important to understand the structure that this country's been built on.
Exactly.
Of a centralized power to look after the well-being of the borders while still having state autonomy within it, so that there's decentralization of power. That way everything remains by the people and for the people.
And that was the framers' intention. That was their that's why they didn't go with a pure democracy, and that's why they didn't go with any of the other things that were available, because communism was available, socialism was available back then. They could have chosen that.
And they could have chosen it because they knew what it was. They came out of it.
Right, exactly. They came out of socialism. If you look at the United Kingdom, Britain, that is an autocratic socialist society. They have a monarchy, and then they have casting, they have classes.
Which, by the way, the monarchy is basically nothing more than glorified welfare, because they don't do anything to live high on the hog and be classified as royalty. They do not only do they not do anything, they function as leeches.
Yeah. Well, what they did was they had the born privilege.
Exactly.
You were of a certain bloodline, so therefore you were considered royalty.
Bingo.
Not through merit, but through progeny. That's
Correct.
it.
You got it.
Okay. So socialism as a construct, again, really doesn't exist. Did you know that? We'll label it socialism. They try saying Denmark and Norway, and although even Britain is it's really not. There's no socialistic bent to it. It's an autocratic society. The UK is. Denmark, Norway, and all those, they're capitalists.
Netherlands,
capitalist. There.
big time.
They're capitalists. Why? Because they sell things and make money. And they compete in a market.
And they're utterly liberal, but they're capitalist.
Right. They're progressives. Okay. So socialism's off the table. Nazism's kind of neat, in that Nazism took socialism and fascism and said, let's do this.
With dictatorships.
Remember, socialism always has a despot. Most of them have a despotic leader or an autocratic leader, someone who is in sole control. Okay. Socialism, the king in the UK. So you can see this. Nazism, most people don't even understand what Nazism is. They say, well, you're being a Nazi. This is Nazi-like of you. They don't understand what Nazi really stands for. So we're going to clear that up real quick. The word Nazi is a acronym. It is it's a shortened word. It actually stands for the National Socialist German Republic Party.
Say that again.
The National Socialist German Republic Party. Okay. The Nazi Party.
Republic Party. See, and notice,
it's very important you understand. It's very important you understand the Republic Party.
Same thing with China.
Yep. We'll get into that here in just a minute. So National Socialism. Hallmarked by, now you're taking socialism and you're combining nationalism. Okay, nationalism is where everything is nationalized. The nation owns everything. You are seen as either a credit or a debit. You're either a liability or you're an asset.
Which is what people
That's all you get.
And which was what people are crying for in this country, particularly when it comes to medical.
Exactly. So nationalism is, if you look over the course of history through the cycle of civilization, you'll see it over and over and over again. Nationalism is always born out of great oppression and poverty. Understand that. It is always born out of great oppression and poverty. Our country is very nationalist after World War II, after the Depression and World War II. We came home, our boys came home victorious over the Nazis and over the Imperial Japanese, and we had a wonderful nationalistic bent. We had patriotism, we had pride, and we had affluence as a result. We're going to get back to that. So Nazism is an offshoot of fascism. It is a very narrow sliver of fascism. All right, are you with me?
Yep.
Italians were fascists.
Yep.
So, let's go talk about fascism. Fascism is a neat little government. It's centralization of authority under a dictator, a capitalist economy, but subject to stringent government controls. Well, I'm going to say that two parts again. It is a centralization of authority under a dictator, sole source of authority, no checks and balances.
Correct.
Capitalist economy subject to stringent government controls, violent suppression of opposition.
That's red fascism.
We're getting there. No. Red fascism has more to it. Violent suppression of the opposition and a very overt nationalism, belligerent nationalism, and marked by racism, not classism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
There's your rhetoric, people. You keep calling people racist and you don't even know what you're talking about. And I keep bringing that up.
There it is.
Don't use it because you don't understand. You're just setting the stage for genocide.
Exactly right. Because true racism exists. It does. We know that. But the definition of fascism has a racist component, and it's not about skin color. It's about where you came from.
And where they don't want you to go.
And where they don't want you to go. Exactly right.
But they're going to cloak it in skin color because that's who they want you to go after.
Well, it's easier to divide a nation by look than it is by number.
Well, that and something that the average person that isn't educated can understand.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's way easier instead of educating and doing the globalesque thing where we're going to kill the Jews because they're Jews. We're going to paint. The first step in what Goebbels did was he took care of all the mentally ill people, all of the infirm, all of the burdens of society. Remember, we said assets or liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And he made a concerted marketing effort to sway the German people to get rid of the least of the society.
You know, John, we saw this back in the late 80s and early 90s with a fellow named, actually out of Michigan, if I remember correctly. And didn't he have the same name you do, the first name? Kevorkian?
Exactly.
And folks, this is exactly where Trudeau with the Canadians are right now. This is going to lead the Canadians into an area of life that is going to dictate.
They're already there.
A response, and the response is going to either end up one way or the other, and it's going to be very spectacular to get there.
Mm-hmm. So on this fascism thing, there's something I really want to cover here. Fascists don't believe that the hierarchy is chosen. They believe it's natural. They believe it's natural. They believe there's a natural societal hierarchy. That is racism.
Oh,
period.
Okay, so let's connect these dots then, people. Now you see where evolution enters society through science, medicine, and education.
Yep. And by the way, this is a little tangent for you. Charlie Darwin had very little to do with the evolutionary theory. He was the last piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Lyell and Erasmus Darwin were the real proponents. Charles Lyell was a lawyer, and Erasmus Darwin was Chuck's dad.
Yeah, I knew that.
They were atheists, and they were the ones that pushed the evolutionary garbage to the point where Darwin, who was a theologian, left the faith and wrote The Origin of Species. And even Darwin at the end of the book said none of this could really happen.
And let's just say this, John. Let's just say this. Mm-hmm. The two that you mentioned that are the originating proponents, there's only one reason why they would put somebody else as the front runner and face of their movement. And that is if it went sideways, he would get axed and they would get shoved
He's
off.
The fall guy.
And they would get shoved off into the shadows and never get touched.
Yep. Exactly right.
Which happens all the time today. Stop and think and look at what is going on.
So the next proponent of fascism is its intense hatred for socialism and communism.
Which is why I keep telling you people that just because you have two countries that are communist, fascist, or socialist working together does not mean they're all going to play together well in the same sandbox when it's all shaken loose.
And it also sounds a whole lot like the rhetoric we have heard coming from our country for how long?
Since we've been alive.
Communists are the boogeyman. I'm going to have to grab a charger. Tim, go ahead. I got to grab a charger real quick and plug my phone in. Go ahead and talk just for a second, please.
Copy that. So, folks, I hope you're enjoying this video so far. I hope that it is enlightening and educating, and that you begin to see and understand how these things come together and work, because you have to be able. People say, you know, well, you're seeing the forest for the trees, or you're seeing the trees for the forest. You have to be able to see both to be able to connect the dots. You have to be able to operate in the understanding of who people claim to be, what they do, and what history shows that they have done in the past, because that will draw your line as to where they're going to end up. That will draw your line as to where they are going to end up. I'm going to take just a small moment of time and ask that if this has been beneficial to you up to this point, again, that you go to my YouTube channel, that you like, subscribe, share it, please, and because there will be more. Tomorrow I'm going to have another guest on, and he is going to talk about how he was an average person, an average worker, living an average life, and retired at 32 years of age, and now lives an above average life, or I wouldn't say above average, I would say beyond average, because he is doing things that some would consider to be on a bucket list. And he, having just worked a factory job and retired at 32, is able to do a lot of very, very meaningful things in life. And so I'm going to have him on tomorrow. We just spoke while we're actually doing this broadcast, and we're going to do this tomorrow. Friday, I'm going to have another guest on who's a very, very special guest to me, and we're going to talk about overcoming depression, not from a point of a clinical standpoint, but how we identify what we go through and how we help each other as well as a spiritual aspect. That individual, I'll tell you right now, is extremely special to me because it's my, actually our firstborn, our daughter, who went through a time, and I'll give you a little teaser. She felt called to go to Ohio. We moved her to Ohio. She went into a very dark time, and I basically, she wanted to come home, and I said, "You're welcome to come home, but I think you need to stick it out and find out why you said you were called to be there." And next thing you know, she's getting married and moving to a foreign land to be a missionary. And so Friday at 10 o'clock, we're going to do that video, and I hope that that will be an extremely, extremely helpful video to all who watch it. And I just hope that that is shared out as well, because it's just going to be I'm very proud of her. I'm very proud of her husband, and I just pray that and hope that that'll be extremely helpful to everybody that watches that video. So one more time, you're watching Timotheos Media TV. What I'm doing is I'm working on building a media and publishing company under the banner of Timotheos. And if you understand anything about the Greek language, it's just a very basic compound word that time means to honor, and theos means God, to honor God. And it is my first name. It took me a while to come up with this whole thing, and so that's why I call it Timotheos Enterprises. I'm in enterprise. I am in it to make money, but that's not my main goal. My main goal is to make money to make it happen, and that's the bottom line. So with that, that's what we're doing here. We are making media content for your benefit and to honor God. End of discussion. And so what we're talking about today is what is the USA becoming? And we're taking a look, talking with John Woolard, taking a look at constitutional republic versus progressivism versus socialism, communism, fascism, red fascism, and the like. So that, folks, is exactly what we are taking a look at right now as we discuss this various topic. And so to get back with to get back with the discussion, let me get John back on here. We are talking here with John Woolard. John, we're back.
All right. So we had just walked through what fascism is. And the key components I want to make sure everyone understands is a dictatorial leader. Am I there? Are we good?
Yes, I just want the people to know. I understand a lot of stuff. I'm taking notes anyways. I highly recommend you do the same.
There's a lot of information coming yet, so I would be writing this stuff down. A dictatorial leader, a centralized governance under a dictatorial leader, rampant militarism, suppression, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy.
Can we go back to the other one?
Which one?
Forcible suppression.
Militarism.
Forcible suppression.
Forcible suppression of opposition. That's a government opposition, by the way.
So let's just interject real quick.
Sure. What might be going on right now?
Exactly. We are going to suppress our opposition, accusing them of certain things that are and should be illegal, while we ourselves are doing exactly what we're accusing our opponents of.
That's exactly right.
Now, Let's just say this before.
Project, reflect, and protect. That's the three things they're doing.
Say it again.
Project, reflect, and protect.
Now, folks, in our steps to who we are as a country of the United States of America, after this forcible suppression of opposition, there's only one thing left to do
Exactly right.
beyond forcible suppression. And we saw Hitler do it with the Night of the Long Knives when he gathered all of his useful idiots up that did his dirty work for him in one night. And by the next morning, they all had a 9mm in the back of the head.
Yep. So, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy, racism, subordination of individual interest for the perceived good of the nation, the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And
keep up, I got to replace batteries. Keep going.
Yep. Strong regimentation of society and the economy. I'm going to say it right from the beginning again. Dictatorial leader, centralized governance, militarism, suppression of the opposition, any dissenting voice. Like if I have an opinion about, I don't know, what gender is, and it doesn't go with the popular narrative, I am suppressed. It's not just political. Understand that. And then subordination of individual interest for the perceived good of the nation and or the race. And then a strong regimentation of society and economy. So we saw that in Italy before World War II. We're seeing it in this country right now. Why would I say something like that? We're a free country and we're capitalists. No, we're not. Open a business without a permit. Build a shed without a permit. Go fishing without a license.
Exactly.
I can go on and on and on. Unfortunately, when Tim and I first started talking, we talked about why are we where we're at? Complacency and conditioning. Right? Those are the two things I mentioned. As long as it doesn't bother me, it doesn't bother me. This is erosion. This is erosion of rights. And this is why we, people like myself and Tim, are so vocal about things. We're like, look, guys, this is coming. And we get called everything you could ever imagine. Yeah. Mostly alarmists and fear-mongers and war warners, conspiracy theorists, all of those things.
And John, let's just touch on this for a moment. So given what you just said, there's an idiom or a statement talks about putting your head in the sand.
Yep.
Burying your head in the sand. Where did that?
Ostriching, yes.
Thank you. Explain that, because I know what it comes from. I know exactly where it comes from. Why don't you go ahead and explain that? Because the normalcy bias that is dictated us desires and helps you become the ostrich putting your head in the sand. So explain that real quick, and we'll just keep right on moving.
Well, the whole thing comes, it's actually British in origin, and it comes from the willing.
Actually, it comes from Job. The book of Job.
Well, yeah, if you go back that far, but the literal putting your head in the sand is where I'm going to. We can walk it back to that.
I mean, Job says the ostrich puts its head in the sand and lets its eggs be devoured by its foe.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was trying to keep it more of a modern understanding. But
Well,
yeah, that's
well,
exactly the origin of it.
then go to your modern one because
Right.
they're both there.
Well,
So
it's the same tenet, right? So instead of standing against fascism, instead of standing against Nazism, instead of standing against communism, instead of standing against Islamic imperialism, we negotiate and we try to appease. Look at the state of Israel. Look at the nation state of Israel. Appeasement doesn't work because you will never appease evil. You won't. Evil's consumptive. So when we get into this fascism,
wow.
we've worked through what it is. All right. We've worked through what it is. But listen very close. Now, I'm going to bring it right to modern day. Do we hear anybody talking about anti-liberalism? There's a huge component in the United States right now that anti-liberal, that's a real narrative, yes? And we hear the other side of it, anti-conservatism, right? The liberals hate the conservatives hate the liberals. And then what you need is a unifying theme for the hatred, okay? And that's anti-communism. You with me? We have anti-liberalism, anti-conservatism, and anti-communism. What you've done is directed everyone toward an autocratic society that is heavily regulated, has central banking, and one form of government. The very definition of fascism. So, fascism is kind of where we're at right now here. Does that mean we are fascists? No, it does not. It does not. The majority of this country would pale at that comparison. However, we are not governed by the people at this point. I'll make that bold assertion. We're simply not governed by we the people right now.
It's a facade.
How do I know that? How do I know this? Has the nation ever been given a referendum other than an election every 4 years on any issue you see coming from a legislator? No, because we have a representative government. It's so easy. It's so easy to change the context and texture of a country if all you have to do is manage 535 representative leaders. Because there's 300 and some million in this country.
Say that again.
So all you have to do is manage the majority of 535 legislators.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone ever hear of a lobbyist? That's their job.
And pay the people to be on board.
Exactly. That's what a lobbyist does. They are there to sway the opinion of the 535 legislators, the lawmakers in this country.
So let's just say this. Those people who we think are here to represent us are really been given a promise to have a seat at the round table.
Yep.
And they really don't.
In large part, yes.
And they really don't represent us. They are getting paid to act like they represent us from both sides. They're playing both sides.
Yep. Against the middle.
Against one side, against us.
Right. Well, we are the middle. We're the crab sandwich. So
please don't fiddle with the Oreo middle.
All right. So now check this out. You have 535 legislators that are being influenced. Many of these men and women are genuine. The newest people are genuine. Okay. many of the newest crop are genuine. They are, and they don't last long. Have you ever noticed that the ones that are real stalwart tend to disappear very quickly from that scene? Why? Because they know it's not going anywhere. I know several people that were elected to office as representatives, and they left office because it's an unwinnable fight for them.
John, I have two primary examples, personal examples of exactly what you are talking about. And and during Obama's presidency, when he was putting out the Obamacare, of which Pelosi said we have to vote for it to see what's in it, my father called his representative in Michigan to voice his concern in opposition. Within the same 2 weeks, I did exactly that. I called Manchin's office here in West Virginia, and I'm going to call the scoundrel out because, as far as I'm concerned, he's an opportunist communist. Yep. And I did exactly the same thing. Both of those offices told my father, his representative told him the same thing Manchin's office told me, almost word for word, like they were given a script.
Yep.
And that was, number one, there are plenty and more people that are for it than against it. And number two, just in case you don't like that, we don't care what you think or you want. We're going to do what we want to do. Yep. Bottom line is that was an office of so-called representation, and that'll tell you right there that they are nothing more than a managed middleman.
Exactly right. And remember the definition that I gave of fascism: centralized authority.
Whether it's one or a group.
It's going to come down to one here very quickly. We're almost there.
Exactly.
So now we've used the terms, we've walked through everything. Now we're at red fascism. Remember how I said communism and socialism really don't exist? They're marketing avenues to really kind of basically Trojan horse the real deal. Okay.
So fascism doesn't necessarily use the end of the barrel to get what they want, as in a literal expletive of the barrel. In other words, the barrel's there. It's a sign for you. It's a warning.
It's implied.
Exactly. It's implied. Remember we talked about, stop and think about this. We talked, and John, before we get into red fascism, let's understand this. We talked about, let me go back to the notes. We talked about a forcible military or something to that line, whatever your words were.
Forcible silencing of opposition.
No, after that. Heavy military.
Militarism, yes.
Okay, militarism. Now, before you think in your mind military, you have to understand this country, militarism. Okay, let me stop. Let's go through this. Over the last decade, how much ammunition was bought by organizations that so-called did not have any need for billions of rounds of military calibers, NATO calibers, number one. Number two, how many non-military departments or agencies actually hired several 100,000 armed agents, aka the U.S. Postal Service and the IRS, to name two. Yep. Now we're talking about, what did you say? Militarism. Militarism. Okay, it's not the military yet. It's not the military.
That's coming.
Exactly. This is the difference between implied and forcible compliance without the military.
Compliance.
Without the military, militarism without the military. And now, people, the only thing left between forcibly silencing your opposition and what we said is the bullet, or as we see in other countries, assassinations.
Yep.
As a whole, we go from I can't even get this word, militarism. We go from militarism of agencies to military itself. Now we're into red fascism. Thank you, John. I stole your thunder. Go ahead. Woo! So I jumped in front of the train.
Militarism always begins with a policy in which military preparedness is the primary importance to a nation state.
Oh, wait a minute. 2015. What was that national 3-month field training? Jade Helm. Oh, Jade Helm 15. Oh yeah. Conquering the human domain.
Yep.
And Jade Helm 16. Conquering the media. Oh, by the way, conquering the human domain, we're going to run that straight into all of the media and the artificial intelligence and the military all wrapped into a ball of wax. Never mind. I'm stealing your thunder again. Sorry, John. This stuff just gets me rolling, man.
Then Jade Helm 19 and 20. What was Jade Helm 19 and 20? People don't even know. It's called COVID. They took over your health care.
So let's say this another way for Jade Helm 19 and 20. You have, for the comic strips, you have Comic-Con. Then you have Con-Con. You see where I'm going with this? And then you have the Trekkies, you have Comic-Con, Con-Con, and then you got COVID-Con.
Yep.
Anyways, go ahead.
Yep. The new variant is BS 24/7, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and it's been in the works since 2020 at the least.
It has. So now we're caught up to red fascism.
Red fascism.
Red fascism is really what happened in Russia. All right. And really what happened, they called it Nazism because it was a small sliver and it wasn't wide enough. Had Germany been able to pull off what they were going to do with the Third Reich, you would have seen red fascism. German Nazism and Italian fascism were no different other than the color of the clothes they wore. Italian fascism is called brown fascism.
Which is where we get the term.
I'm sorry, green fascism.
Okay.
Nazism was called brown fascism.
Which is where we get
Russia
the term.
Russia is called
red.
Red fascism.
So green, you said green comes from where?
Italy.
Green would be friendly, folks.
Yep.
Brown would be Hitler.
Yep.
And red would be, give me 3 names. 4 names.
Well, you're looking at
4 names, sorry. At least 4 names.
4 names?
At least 4 coming out of Russia. Stalin, yep.
Stalin.
Yep.
Khrushchev.
5 names.
Lenin.
Lenin, Khrushchev.
Putin.
And where's Mussolini? That's Italian?
Mussolini's Italy.
Italy, okay.
Mussolini was Italy. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, have you ever heard of Maoism?
Oh, that's the Chinese version of red.
Mm-hmm. Stalinism, Maoism, Marxist, Leninism, Marxism.
Yep.
They're all red fascism.
Mm-hmm.
Because they all come via the same identical way. They promise by ballot. they happen by bullet.
Correct. I like that. Promise by ballot. That's good, John.
So, red fascism. Where are we on the scale of red fascism in this country? There are two things stopping this country from tipping over into complete red fascism. We've already established that we're a neo-fascist state. Okay, we are. What is the next thing to come? Two things have to happen. We have to have a reset of wealth. That happened in 2008. It started.
Mm-hmm.
Then Bitcoin came on the digital currency. Untraceable, untrackable, and untouchable. All they have to do is get all of y'all's money in an account, in a digital account, and then just kill the account and take your money. It's very simple.
So the question is, in 2008, which was proponent to being anti-imperial,
Mm-hmm.
was it really? Or was they just, once again, letting us perfect their dirty work at our own expense?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Because people were complacent, therefore they were complicit. So now we're into this red fascism. The two things that are holding back this in this country is habeas corpus. All right. For those of you that don't know what habeas corpus is, that means that the military cannot be used on our soil.
But
you can use the National Guard.
They've blown that out of the water.
They have tangentially, yes. But we'll get to that in a second. Yeah. So they can use the National Guard, which is not a federal military apparatus. It is a state military apparatus. Okay. That's how they get around this. The second part of it, once you suspend habeas corpus, then you are completely into martial law. How many times have we heard about martial law in this country?
Quite a bit in the last 10 years.
You think? Why are they threatening martial law on a very low-key level? Remember, carrot and stick. This is all carrot and stick. It's all it's ever going to be. They can no longer welfare the state into compliance because people are getting pissed.
Well, not only that, we had talked about fascism implying compliance by the warning of the barrel, which would imply the putting out of information of martial law and the rhetoric of martial law. That is the impliance of the barrel for compliance.
Yep. And that only works for so long. You could see it. That only works for so long. And the Bolshevik Revolution is actually the case study in how those warnings go.
And that was the other name that I was looking for with the others. Yeah,
we were getting there. So they were warned. The autocratic, the ruling czarship was warned over and over and over again. The military, the government even warned them, stop what you're doing or we go to the next level. Mm-hmm. And the people were warned. And the people were hungry, and the people were poor, and the people were destitute, the people were oppressed, the people had hope removed from them.
And they were
ripe for a leader.
And this is what we're going to see with the Great Reset.
That's exactly the next steps. None of it's new. We will be stepping into Great Oppression.
Great Depression.
We will. It will be something that makes the Great Depression look like a blip on the radar.
You got it.
So once this happens, and we're not far from it, I think you're going to see this in the next year. You're going to see something really interesting happen with this next election. Mm-hmm. There won't be one.
and at the same time, we're going to be smokescreened with the Great Reset.
Exactly. They're going to come at us from so many directions that we won't know where to focus energy.
By the way,
that was perfected. That was perfected by the Obama administration.
And by the way, folks, two things. Number one, John and I did not discuss in any detail. This is something that we have discussed over the last over the last decade. We did not prepare for this show collaboratively.
No, we did not.
John got his information together. We said, and he made a statement, and I said, John, you need to come on with me and talk about this. This is very important. And I simply bring my understandings to the table. And we just got together. We got together to make it happen today, but we just got together today. Folks, we're piggybacking off of each other right now. This is real live time. We did not collaborate on this piggyback of information prior to us going live. This is
we used independent sources of research and vetting over many years independently from one another, and we arrived at the very same location
right now. John
today.
John did not John did not share his information with me.
Nope.
I did not share my information with him. The only thing we've ever done is take a look at what's going on around us and go, oh, there's another dot. Oh, there's another dot. Oh, there's another dot. Oh, there's another dot. And John says, oh, there's a dot. And I say, oh, there's a dot. And we put the two dots together. That's all we've done for the last 15 years. Right?
Yep.
13 to 15.
Very much so.
13 to 15 years.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about this and you see us piggybacking off of each other, you really need to stop. And here's another thing. Stop and think. Don't just think about and think how people tell you to think. Even us. You need to stop and think through the processes so that you can see the end from the beginning before you ever get to the end. Otherwise, you're only going to be relegated to complacency.
So a couple things I'll leave you with.
And by the way, let's bring in, lest we just hang this on Obama's shoulders.
Oh, no.
The Bushes were very key in this whole thing.
Right up to their freaking eyebrows.
If you remember Daddy Bush.
As was Clinton, as was Jimmy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Brother, I can walk this back into how, like, before World War II.
So, and I don't know if people want us to do that. We're going into, we're 9.5 minutes away from 2 hours of live streaming, but let me just
couple things I want to leave you with.
Well,
okay, I hate to interrupt. Go ahead.
I'm just going to give you one example. The Bushes, and I've said this before, the Patriot Act had nothing to do with patriotism.
Nope.
Not a thing. The Patriot Act is the Patriot Act is the Communist Manifesto wrapped in the flag.
Well, understand. Remember when I described all of these things? One of them,
it centralized it all.
One of them was centralizing and extreme nationalism, doing things for the greater good that removes individual liberties and rights.
And it militamized the agencies.
Militarized
the agencies.
Yep. Weaponizes them, actually. So, a couple of names I want you, dear followers, to look up. Norman Thomas. Look up Norman Thomas. Find out who he was and what he did. He was the first person in this country that will talk about this. And this was in like the 1940s. Not a new concept. Then you need to look up Tojo, Tojo. Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo. Next thing you want to look up is Jack Tenney, Tenney. He wrote something wonderful in 1947. Look it up, read it. But even before that, in 1931, Chinazi, the term was coined, Chinazi, by Yujie, Y-U-J-I-E. He was a Chinese dissident. Warned everybody. Y-U, that's his first name, last name J-I-E. Yujie. This was done way before China even declared who and what they were. So this has been worked on. This has been coming for a very long time. So what do we do about it? That's really going to be the thing. What do we do about it? We've labeled a problem, and if you don't label a problem, or if you label a problem and you don't give a solution, all you're doing is whining. Okay.
That was
what do we do
exactly what I was going to say. What do we do? And if we
what do we do,
folks? We have to take a stand. Let me just say this before John gets into this. Before John gets into this, when John and I were in school, and if you're my age or John's age or slightly younger, but not a whole lot, and I've said this here recently, you were told that everybody was special like a snowflake. There are no two alike, and everybody makes it. You remember that in the second grade? And everybody makes a difference. And now you're being told you're just one person. You won't make a difference. You're just one person. You won't make a difference. And guess what, people? You do. One person does make a difference.
You do.
One person makes a difference. And if you don't make a difference right where you are, come on. Why is this thing doing this to me?
We may have to do a part 2 because we still haven't gotten to 1961 and 1989 yet.
Well,
two pivotal things that we need to discuss.
Well, let's go ahead and discuss it.
Let's do it. 1961. What happened in 1961? August 13th, to be exact.
Why is it? Oh, I'm on the wrong camera. Oh, there we go. Whew. Oh, that ain't it either. I'm hitting the wrong buttons here. This is the downfall of being a one-man pony show here. Okay, here we go.
Yep. So, August 13th, 1961, the German Democratic Republic was building something. What were they building? Now remember, everything I've described that tells you about everything that we're heading toward. The GDR began to build a barbed wire encampment around half of a city. That was given to them in the Potsdam Declaration.
In 60,
what we call the Berlin Wall.
In 61?
Yep.
I thought that was built before then.
No. There was a line of demarcation established, and there were checkpoints. But the Berlin Wall was built in 61.
Interesting. My history.
Pretty wild, isn't it?
Yeah, my history lapsed on that one.
Do you know why they had to do this?
So
because they were losing 2,400 people a day on average were defecting to the West.
So a quarter of a century later is when it came back down.
They started to build the wall, and this wall was called something very specific. Very specific. It was called the Antifascistischer. The anti-fascist wall. Interesting, huh? And it came down November 9th, 1989. So,
But yet it wasn't called
the following.
it wasn't called the anti-communist law or wall.
No, no.
And it wasn't called the anti-socialist law.
Wall.
It wasn't even called the anti-progressive law
Conservative?
or wall.
Wasn't called the anti-progressive. No, it was called the anti-fascist wall. So bulwark is actually the name, but
and my point is, yeah, and my point is the reason why I say that is because it was simply one form of tyranny against another.
Exactly right. So in 1948 is when the line of demarcation happened after the Potsdam Declaration, and that's where the border was drawn. Okay. The only reason they built the wall is what happened in 1961. And that was, remember? Checkpoint Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We almost had a nuclear war because of that stupid line.
Yep.
So they built a wall to stop it. All right. So the Berlin Wall stood from 61 till 89. Now, people that have studied East Germany understand that East Germany wasn't very big and East Berlin was way little. Okay. What was East Germany known for? There's really three things. Number one, excellent microphones. Telefunken. Telefunken microphones were made. Anyone who's recorded music knows that Telefunken and Neumann, which is who it became, are the top of the crop as far as microphones go. The next thing was really good tubes. Again, musical. The third thing was that is where the KGB was trained. That is where most of your operatives of the red fascism and the KGB and all of the other nefarious people were trained, was in East Germany.
That's interesting.
Isn't it?
Considering that Germany and Russia are supposedly opposition.
Crazy, isn't it?
It's amazing.
But East German purported themselves to be communists and in concert with Russia.
Red fascist.
Mm-hmm.
And
who?
Let's just say red fascist.
Just to that end, who tore down the wall? Who was in power, and who was the name that Ron Reagan called out to tear down the wall?
Mikhail Gorbachev.
And he's not German.
Nope. But it was on the German line.
Exactly. So check this out. On that day, the German chancellor said at midnight, you can leave through that gate without showing any papers. You are free to walk through the gate. So what he did, and this was all by plan, what they did was they loosed a country, a small section of the country whose sole purpose was to train people in spycraft. They let them walk into the population unfettered, unchecked, and unrestricted. Most of them were given degrees to teach at university level.
So this is, okay, so let's add a couple more dots. So, and this come 20 years some later after World War II and even after paperclip. This is like the frosting and the birthday candles on the paperclip cake. People,
yep.
Stop and think. Okay, John, nobody knows what I'm talking about. So, folks, paperclip was when we kicked Hitler out of Russia or out of Germany, which I question that we really did. We basically just looked like the good guy to the boogeyman, when in fact we were doing exactly the same things Hitler was doing, with everything from militarized advances to energy weapons to aerodynamics and space engineering, as well as genetic mutations and chemical stuff, as well as psyche. We were doing the same thing. So was Japan, and we wanted their technology, period. And so, rather than be in leagues with him, like they were going to be with Russia, we decided to kick Hitler out, but take all of his goodies and bring them home to our sandbox. And the Berlin Wall was just the frosting in the candles on the paperclip birthday cake.
Well, Khrushchev hated the Berlin Wall. He did not like the fact that Berlin was divided, nor that Germany was divided. His exact words were, "This declaration is a bone in the throat of the USSR." His exact words. The fact that West Berlin existed in so far into East Germany, I'm reading it right now, stuck like a bone in the Soviet throat, Nikita Khrushchev put it.
I'll be right back. You keep going.
So in 1948, they blockaded West Berlin. And that's where the Berlin airlift came into play. So it was always sequestered since the war, but the wall wasn't built until 1961. And that was because of the standoff at Checkpoint Charlie. So now, we are here. We are here, and we have a wall that has fallen in 1989. And we have unprecedented free access to the United States and our education system. You know that it only takes a couple of generations to completely change the texture and society of a country. And how it happens is through the next group of leadership. Next group of leadership. Where do those leaders come from? As Tim so eloquently put, most of them are lawyers. You don't become a lawyer by working at a farm. You become a lawyer by going to college. You become a political science major by going to college. You become a criminology major by going to college. So they knew this, and they knew that that was going to be the future that was so easily predictable. So they infiltrated the colleges. They did. I don't know how much longer to go, and we've been at this quite a long time. There's a lot to discuss. There are 13 families. I'm going to jump from that because that's pretty self-explanatory. They came here. We see the outcome. The complete liberalization, progressivism movement, which is leading us toward socialism, which is proponent toward communism, which is really fascism overall. I believe we've proven that case. Why? We talked about what to do. You got to stand. You got to be a voice. We have to understand that there are people that control this. There are people that pull. Most people don't even understand, Tim, that the people that run the Federal Reserve, our centralized banking system, financed the World War II on both sides.
Yeah, well, that's been going on since World War I, at least.
But they financed the Nazis and they financed the Allies. Most people don't understand that the Federal Reserve isn't controlled by our government. It's an autonomous system that we borrow money from and pay back. However, it's filled with our tax dollars.
Yep.
So I want to say some names here. Has anyone ever heard of the Rockefellers? Sure. Have you heard of the Rothschilds? Most certainly have. DuPonts. You heard of the DuPont family? Heard of them? Yeah. Sure you have. You ever heard of the Astors?
Nope.
The Bundys?
Yep. As in the Bundy Ranch?
No, the Bundy bloodline. The Collins family. The Freemans. Here's a name you might know. The Kennedys.
And everybody wants this.
Onassis.
Everybody wants this one Kennedy to become president.
No thanks. The Onassis bloodline. Ever heard of the Onassis bloodline? After JFK was assassinated, who did she marry? She became Jacqueline Onassis.
Because they got to stay within the bloodlines.
The Freeman bloodline. The Lee, L-I. What is that surname? Where does that come from? Ever heard of a guy named Jet Li? Last name spelled L-I. Where is he from?
Red State?
China. The Russells. The Van Doyen. Uh-oh. That's not American. The Merovingian. The Merovingian. Merovingian. The Merovingian bloodline. And then the Rothschilds. Those are the 13 families that really run the whole thing.
Actually, you already said the Rothschilds.
Yeah, I just looked at the end of my list.
13, yep. 13.
So there's 13 families, and these are the families that can buy Bill Gates like corner store candy. Now check this out. The master planners, all these people, guys, this all started in 1882 and it really reached fruition in 1912.
By the way, John, all of this stuff is tied through Geneva, Switzerland.
Oh, we're heading there right now. The Geneva Convention.
Yeah. I thought that was a good thing when I was in the military. It's nothing but...
Yeah, don't get me started.
Yeah.
That was the marketing.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah.
So the merger among nations has been in play and in plan since the late 1800s.
And where do people go to launder their money primarily?
Well, where's Geneva?
Exactly. Where do the Bilderbergers meet?
It's not in this country.
Just while you're scanning your notes there's a young lady whose name is Webb, Whitney Webb. She is an investigative author, young lady. And I don't mean young like 18. I mean like in her mid-20s, or late 20s.
Sure.
And she has even tied, you mentioned people that can buy Bill Gates. Well, she has tied the oligarchs, the money people of Ohio to this, as well as the Epstein's Maxine, whatever her name is, to those Ohio people and globally. So what John is saying is you can add not only Gates, but George Soros.
Gates and Soros are minor players.
And as is Epstein, but he is in this mix.
Mm-hmm.
and the whole human trafficking / money laundering / war machine / all of it. And let me just tie Bill Gates to this, and it's all tied to the depopulation movement, and that is Bill Gates' mother is one of the head founders of Planned Parenthood, aka a racist organization, aka government run, and the list goes, and you can run this all through Switzerland, and it all
Little
also
Margaret Sanger.
and it also goes back to Mesopotamia, back further than Switzerland. It goes back to Mesopotamia.
Yep.
Which is where the bloodlines come out of, and what are the folklore stories that come out of Mesopotamia? Dracula and bloodsucking.
Yep. So now,
aka Satan worship.
You have the Crown Council of 13. I just gave you those names. Next step down are the Committee of 300.
Oh, now we're getting into the Clintons and the Bushes.
The Committee of 300. Yep. Now, the Crown Council of 13, that's the Kennedys. Remember, that name's very important. Then you're into the Committee of 300. From the Committee of 300, they have their basically, it's a think tank system. Now we call it AI. From there, they influence the world financial system. World, not the United States, the world financial system. And that is comprised of central banks, tax revenues, and interest revenues.
John, let me ask you this. In your research, does Charles Schwab and the WEF come into this area?
Klaus.
Huh? Or yes, Charles Klaus.
Schwab.
Yeah, Klaus Schwab. Does he come into this Committee of 300?
No, he's in the central bank side.
But I mean, as far as the 13 families versus this next step or the next layer, where does the WEF and the WHO and all that come into all this?
That is part of that's the think tank level stuff. They're the ones that influence the world finances.
So they're getting bought off by the 13. They've been placed.
They're getting the committee of 300 are the ones that are basically the tendrils of the 13, and they're the ones that operate these think tanks, of which Klaus Schwab is a part, that directly affects the finance.
So all that falls under this area here, though.
Oh, most certainly, and it goes further, because you have central banks, tax revenue, interest revenue. You have the Bank of International Settlements. People don't even know what that is. You have the World Bank, which is not just about money, and they run the World Resource Council. Now, the World Resource Council, because you can't have resource without cash. This is a logic of hierarchy, right? So you're looking at ExxonMobil, BP, Total, IBM, DuPont Corporation, Pfizer, the New York Stock Exchange. All of this, all of your major players in resource, okay? Then that comes down to world population. World population. How do we control a world population? You're not going to buy them because you would have no money.
You know, this.
You're not going to.
This reminds me.
Go ahead.
This reminds me. Do not love the world or the things in the world.
Exactly right. Religions, governments, and media. Those are the things you control the population through.
And food.
Well, that's the resource. Remember, we were talking about resource. God, that's where the resources are.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
and I should have said Monsanto, because that's a large part of the food. I'm just giving examples. These aren't exhaustive lists. Okay.
Oh,
so then you have the population control, you have the media, and directly under, you have religion, government, which is the intelligence community, military, police, courts, and prisons.
I was going to say, so not within that you have Interpol.
Exactly. That's the governments. That's the intelligence community, governance, and the military, police, courts, and prisons.
Now,
so Interpol's in that.
And I would conjecture to say,
and schools.
I was just going to say, and I'd venture to say that a certain global 3-letter agency within our sphere is under that as well.
Most certainly.
And
that's
then
the intelligence community.
And then I was going to say education. You just said schools, education.
Media and schools are together in this.
Yeah.
Because the media dictates the narrative that the people who run the Board of Education allow into the schools. And then you have the population and the workers. That is literally the plan from top to bottom. The only thing missing right now is the world monarch, and that's coming very soon.
Boy,
we both know what that's going to be.
But it's a conspiracy.
You want to know what's funny about this? Any of your listeners heard, or have you heard of the thing called GMOs? When did we start hearing about GMOs? Roughly the last 10 years or so, right? You know when they were introduced into the population? 1927.
Right during the Great Depression.
What the Great Depression was manufactured for a reason.
Well, and let's just say this right now then. In that case, if GMOs were introduced in the Great Depression under the colloquialism of better growth of foods for feeding a population, that's the colloquialism to DNA editing / population control.
Bam. RNA.
mRNA.
RNA manipulation, which is mRNA. Exactly.
And that's
the next logical step.
Correct. And folks do not understand that. That stuff is just not in a so-called jib-jab of a COVID vaccine. That stuff has been in our food for generations because, and I'm going to say this outright, you can call this a conspiracy if you want to. But if you connect the dots, they are preparing bodies for whatever they decide they want those bodies to have as injections and or for manipulation. Can we think of something that just hit the FDA called a RODELink? Oh, and
RODELink and glycosine phosphate. Those two things. Glycosine phosphate is manipulatable by radio waves.
Boy, I can't wait to get a hold of that technology because I can't wait to get my Spotify downloaded directly into my brain.
Yep.
And here's the thing. With the mRNA and GMOs being manipulated into our food sources, both plant-based and animal-based, since 1927, and preparing our bodies for this implantation, and then comes the COVID, which is a genetically modified animal virus. If your body, you will either take the implementation or the preparation will kill you. Take your pick.
Yep. I'll die on my feet rather than live on my knees. Thank you.
You're not the first person I've heard say that.
Hopefully I'm not the last.
I hope, well, we ain't going to get into it.
Right. Well, brother, that's basically my presentation. That's where we are. We are heading toward a red fascist state.
And so So let's just sum this up. On a financial level, all it's going to take is a financial reset to put us into depression and rebellion, so that you can have we can go from a militarism into militarization, aka red fascism, and aka population depopulation, and then from depopulation to population control.
Yep. And we will have a world monarch very soon that will, once you see that go into place, then you know the rest of it's all lined up. Because honestly, for any pacification, militarily, any kind of conquest, you don't need to pacify 100% of the population. You need about 40%.
So
that's all they got to do.
Now, let's just say this. 3% was needed to throw off the British government.
Yep.
Do we have 3%? I don't think so.
You know, I at one time I probably would have answered yes. I would have said, yeah, I believe we do. Do we have a large contingent of people who speak a really good game?
Exactly.
And will say, oh, I'll stand. But of that large population, the attrition rate will be 90%. And understand, we had 3% when the enemy was
tiny.
How many strong?
Yeah, tiny. And this is going to be global.
It's going to be global. So 3% won't work.
So the bottom line is that the conditioning has worked, and how do I want to put this? We will have a lot of Peters who will claim one thing and deny it when they're faced with it.
There'll be a scariatism.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you.
That's exactly what that is.
Yep. So let me ask you this: do you have any conjecture or thoughts as to who that one person is?
Well, I believe there's a lot of people that are going to be groomed.
Because Judas did not know who he was until he started conspiring with the devil, number one, and number two, was actually infilled and induced with the devil. So he didn't even know. He conspired, but he conspired based on money and finance. And then, as money and finance dictated his actions and his heart, it says, and then Satan entered into Judas, and then he went out, and he did not even know who he was until he threw the money back into the courts of the Pharisees and the scribes, and went out and hung himself. And that's when he knew who he was.
On that note, that tells me that there has been a person in place, or at least groomed, in every generation.
Yes.
The switch hasn't been thrown yet.
Yes. I would agree.
And once the switch is thrown, you'll see it. You'll see it. Now, the devil loves to mock God, and he loves to do everything God did for his own gain.
He also likes to counterfeit him.
Right. Well, we saw when Jesus was on his way, someone was sent to prepare the way, right? Mm-hmm. We've already seen that in action in this country alone.
And then in the Old Testament, we had Esther.
Yep.
And what was Esther there for?
To prepare the way.
Well, and what did Mordecai tell her?
She was there to save.
And what did Mordecai tell her when she questioned the whole game plan? You are here for such a time as
this. Yep.
People, you make a difference. We are here on this planet. This is, and the people, I've had people say, oh, this is such exciting times. You know what? You're a fool. You're an absolute fool if you think you're going to live under such bloodshed with utopia in mind. You're a fool. But But by the grace of God, we are here for such a time as this.
Yep. And we don't know what part we play, but we know we play a part. So do your part.
Correct.
Discern, go and do, and let God have the outcome. That's the only way I know to do it. Because if I quit worrying about my outcome, then I'm able to actually do something.
And but he does call us to take a stand. In Ephesians,
most certainly.
In Ephesians, he says, yes, in Ephesians, he says, having done all that there is to stand. And today we've been fed a line. Oh, nope. No, you take a stand.
That's right.
And boy,
and
anyways,
it's going to cost you everything.
Yes, it is.
And it's worth everything.
Yeah, because he who seeks to keep his life is going to lose it, and he who seeks to
that's right
and is willing to lose his life will keep it.
That's exactly right. Well, like I said, that's everything I got for you, brother.
All right. Well, this has been 2.5 hours. Wow. I did not realize this was going to go on this long. 2.5 hours of this, but it's been good. I hope it's been good for everybody. I am going to once again bring everybody back to the table. I'm going to do another station identification, John, and then ask people to share this video. I'm thinking I'm going to do some outtakes on it. But, come on now. My mouse does not want to work. Come on, get up. Come on now. I might need a new mouse. This thing does not want to work. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody to go over to YouTube and then go to Rumble. I need 10 people, folks. I need 10 people on Rumble who will follow me so that I don't have to pay to go live on Rumble, and there's less censorship on Rumble. I need to be able to go live on Rumble, but I don't want to have to pay for it. If you can go to Rumble, look for me or Timotheos Enterprises, and go there and follow me there. Like and subscribe on YouTube, if you don't mind, and share my videos out. Let's build this together. Let's build a community together where we can take care of each other, educate each other, and talk back and forth. Once that happens,
Isaiah 1:18.
Speak it.
Come, let us reason together that we may gain.
Yeah. So, and from there, I will be building my website and blogs. I also ask that you go to Etsy, to Timotheos Enterprises shop, and check out the products that I have. Puzzles for jigsaw puzzles for your coffee table. Tempered glass cutting boards for your kitchen. They're beautiful and they're robust. They don't scratch. Coffee mugs with my landscape on them, landscape photographs. Wall clocks and cell phone holders for your desks. And as I have time, I'll keep adding more products. But I ask that you check that stuff out. And from there, remember that I have a video coming tomorrow featuring another young man who's 38 years old who retired at 32 from a factory job because of wise investments and now lives a beyond average life, doing things for other people, things for himself. I mean, you know, you put your neck out there, you reap the benefit and the reward of your labor, and nobody should disparage him of that. But he does other things too, like, and I'll just give you a teaser, he runs fundraisers for people in need, and he'll do a collective, let's say for single moms with kids, he'll run a fundraiser and then fork over a check to help them do whatever they need. And I'm going to talk to him tomorrow on live stream, and then then Friday morning at 10 a.m., I'm going to talk to a young lady who about depression, and she has gone through depression, and as a Christian, she's gone through depression. We're going to talk about that from a non-clinical point of view, and now she is a missionary in the Netherlands. So I've got some things coming up that you might want to tune into, and so we've got those things coming up. And John, it has been an utter pleasure. It's been a real pleasure to have you on with me. I just can't thank you enough for coming by and doing this with me. It's been real good.
My honor, sir.
So I think with that, we'll sign off. I'll get these videos capped and put out there for people to see, and we'll have to come up with the next subject sometime and see what else we want to discuss. All right, so let me see where my... So with that, folks, I think I'll call it a day, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow and Friday. And thank you so much for watching. And again, please share this with people that you think need to hear it and might enjoy it. And I'll see you on the next video.
Be blessed.
You too, John. Take care.